In the bustling streets of Lagos, amidst the noise of traffic and the constant movement of people, there lived a young woman named Dara. She was known for her fierce independence, for her refusal to be constrained by anyone or anything. Dara had grown up in the heart of the city, watching her mother struggle with the weight of tradition and the expectations placed on women. But Dara was different. She swore she would never rely on anyone but herself. Dara lived alone in a modest apartment in Lekki, working as a marketing executive at a prestigious firm. Her life was filled with deadlines, meetings, and the occasional night out with friends. Yet, in the quiet moments, when the noise of the city settled, Dara couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness. Love was something she had always considered a distraction, a weakness she couldn't afford. Her focus was solely on her career and independence. One afternoon, as she was hurrying to her office, Dara accidentally bumped into a stranger on the busy street. He shot him an irritated look. He was tall, with a calm demeanor and eyes that seemed to pierce through her walls. "I'm so sorry," he said softly, his voice gentle yet firm. Dara, too proud to apologize, snapped, "Watch where you're going. I don't have time for your mistakes." The stranger didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled in a way that seemed to unsettle Dara. "I'll make it up to you," he said, before turning and disappearing into the crowd. Dara couldn't shake the encounter from her mind. The man's calmness in the face of her outburst intrigued her, but she quickly dismissed the thought. He was just another stranger in the city, nothing more. Days passed, and life continued its fast-paced rhythm. Dara worked tirelessly, pushing herself to be the best in her field. Yet, something had shifted. She found herself distracted, wondering about that strange man who had crossed her path. Her thoughts were interrupted one morning when she saw him again, this time outside a cafe where she often went for her morning coffee. He was seated at a table, reading a book, his presence calm amidst the chaotic world of Lagos. Dara hesitated for a moment but walked past him without acknowledging his presence. "Dara," he called out softly, his voice carrying a familiar warmth. Dara froze in her tracks, turning slowly. "How do you know my name?" "I'm not sure you remember me, but we met a few days ago," he said with a knowing smile. "I'm Tunde." "Tunde?" Dara frowned, trying to recall his face, but nothing came to mind. Still, something about him was different, almost magnetic. "What do you want?" Tunde smiled again, his eyes twinkling. "Nothing. I just wanted to say hello. And, perhaps, to ask if you've changed your mind about letting someone make up for your mistake." Dara rolled her eyes. "I don't need anyone's help. I can take care of myself." Tunde nodded, not at all surprised by her response. "Fair enough." Over the following weeks, Dara and Tunde's paths crossed several times, each time more subtly than the last. He would appear at the cafe, at the market, even in the elevator of her office building. He never approached her aggressively, never asked for anything more than a brief conversation. Yet, despite her attempts to ignore him, Dara found herself drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. One evening, as Dara was walking home after a particularly grueling day at work, she noticed Tunde sitting by the roadside, watching the hustle of the city. "Still here?" she asked, unable to resist. "Always," he replied with a soft chuckle. "I like observing people. It helps me understand the world better." Dara raised an eyebrow. "You sound like a philosopher." Tunde shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I just want to see if there's more to life than just the daily grind. Like you, for instance." Dara was taken aback. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're always running, Dara. Always busy, always moving. But I wonder, what's driving you? What are you running from?" The question hit Dara harder than she expected. "I'm not running from anything. I'm just living." Tunde's gaze softened. I don't think you believe that. Dara turned away quickly, not wanting to show any vulnerability. But she couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that his words had awakened. Tonde's presence in Dara's life was starting to stir emotions she had long buried. She had never allowed anyone to get close, had always pushed away those who showed any interest in her. But Tunde was different. There was something about him, a quiet strength, an understanding that seemed to see past her walls. And despite herself, Dara found herself seeking his company more and more. One afternoon, after a particularly long day at work, Dara found herself at the same cafe where Tunde often lingered. She spotted him sitting by the window, lost in thought. With a sigh, Dara approached him. "I don't know why I keep running into you," she muttered as she sat down. Tunde smiled, his eyes lighting up. "Maybe because you need to stop running." "I don't need anyone," Dara retorted, her usual defensive tone returning. "I've been fine on my own." Tunde leaned forward, his expression serious. "But are you truly fine, Dara? Or are you just fooling yourself?" Dara's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly masked it with a scowl. "I'm not interested in your advice." "Fair enough," Tunde said, leaning back and giving her space. But his eyes never left her, his gaze steady and unyielding. As the days turned into weeks, Dara could no longer deny the shift within her. She began noticing the small things, how Tunde always helped the elderly woman on her block with her groceries, how he spent hours volunteering at the local shelter, how he would stop to help anyone in need without hesitation. Tunde's actions spoke louder than any words he could ever say. One evening, as she was leaving work, Dara found herself watching Tunde from across the street. He was helping a young boy who had fallen off his bicycle, lifting him with such care and tenderness that Dara's heart fluttered unexpectedly. Tunde noticed her watching and gave her a brief nod before turning his attention back to the boy. But Dara's mind was spinning. What was it about him that made her feel this way? Why was she suddenly so moved by his kindness? Dara couldn't escape her feelings, no matter how much she tried. Every time she saw Tunde, something inside her stirred. And yet, he fought it. She had never needed anyone before, so why did she feel so vulnerable around him? One afternoon, as Dara sat at her desk in the office, she found herself distracted. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Tunde, to the kindness in his eyes, the warmth in his smile. But then, her phone buzzed, breaking her reverie. It was a message from her mother. "Dara, I've heard things about that man. Be careful. You can't trust people like him." Dara's heart sank. Her mother's words were always filled with wisdom, but in this case, they seemed to come from a place of fear. Was her mother right? Was Tunde too good to be true? The following weekend, Dara's family gathered for their regular Sunday meal. As usual, her mother took the opportunity to express her concerns about Dara's growing interest in Tunde. "He seems too quiet, too reserved," her mother remarked over dinner. "You don't know what he's really like. Be careful, Dara." Dara's father, usually silent during these discussions, finally spoke up. "Your mother's right. There's no harm in being cautious. There's no rush to get involved with anyone." But Dara couldn't help but feel conflicted. Was her mother's instinct right, or was she simply projecting her own fears onto Dara? A week later, Tunde invited Dara to a community event he had been organizing at a local center. "I'd love for you to come," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "It's just a small gathering, but I think it would mean a lot to the people here if you were there." Dara hesitated. The invitation stirred a strange mix of excitement and apprehension within her. What would happen if she went? What would it mean for her to open up to him, to let him into her life? "I don't know," Dara replied. "I'm not sure I fit in with your kind of people." "You do," Tunde insisted. "You just haven't seen it yet." Dara arrived at the community center reluctantly, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts. But as she entered, she was struck by the warmth of the atmosphere. People were laughing, sharing stories, and enjoying each other's company. Tunde was there, as always, helping wherever he could. But this time, Dara noticed something else: how natural he looked in this environment, how comfortable he was with everyone. She watched him for a while, and then something shifted within her. For the first time, she saw the truth in his words. Love, kindness, and connection were not weaknesses, they were the things that made life worth living. As the event came to a close, Tunde walked over to Dara, his expression serious. "I know you're confused, but I want you to understand something, Dara. I'm not trying to change you. I'm not asking you to depend on me. I'm asking you to see that there's another way to live." Dara looked at him, her heart pounding. She had always believed that independence was the key to survival, but now she was beginning to wonder if there was more to life than that. With a deep breath, she met his gaze. "I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do." Tunde smiled softly. "You don't have to do anything. Just think about it." In the days that followed the community event, Dara found herself wrestling with her thoughts. She had always believed that needing anyone was a weakness, that her success came from standing alone. But Tunde had planted a seed in her heart, and now that seed was growing into a question that Dara wasn't sure how to answer: could she allow herself to be part of something greater than her own ambition? Her mind was clouded with doubt as she went about her daily routine. At work, her boss praised her for her dedication and drive, and her colleagues admired her independence. Yet, as she sat at her desk, she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something important was missing. She realized that for all her accomplishments, she was still lonely. Late one night, as Dara walked home from work, she bumped into Tunde once again. He was standing at the corner, seemingly waiting for her. "You're out late," he said with a knowing smile. Dara shrugged, unwilling to admit the restlessness inside her. "Just trying to clear my mind." Tunde didn't press her. Instead, he simply walked beside her, allowing the silence between them to grow comfortable. For the first time, Dara didn't mind the quiet. She didn't feel the need to speak, to justify herself. She just walked beside him, as though the city noise faded away and the world had narrowed to just the two of them. The next day, Dara received a call from her mother. "I don't know what you see in that man, but I worry about you." Her mother's voice was filled with concern. "You've always been so strong, so independent. You don't need someone like him to cloud your judgment." Dara didn't respond right away. Instead, she felt an unfamiliar heaviness in her chest. Her mother's words had always guided her, but they were starting to feel like shackles now, holding her back from something she wasn't sure of but felt compelled to explore. The struggle within her deepened. That evening, she sat in her apartment, staring at her phone, contemplating whether to respond to Tunde's latest message. He had invited her to a local park, asking her to come for a peaceful walk. The thought of letting someone into her life so freely made her nervous, but she couldn't deny the pull in her heart. Tunde had been a constant, calm presence in her life when everything else felt chaotic. Taking a deep breath, she typed a simple reply: "I'll meet you there." The park was peaceful, far from the noise of Lagos, with trees swaying in the breeze and birds singing overhead. Dara found Tunde waiting for her at their usual spot, under a large oak tree. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he said with a smile. Dara managed a small smile in return but didn't speak. She was still unsure about what she was feeling, but the serenity of the park seemed to settle her nerves. As they walked, Tunde spoke of his childhood, of growing up in a small village and learning the value of community. He spoke of love not as a fleeting emotion but as an enduring force that tied people together. His words were simple but profound, and they made Dara think about her own life in ways she never had before. I've always thought that love was a distraction, Dara confessed after a long silence. I thought if I could just focus on myself, on my career, then I'd be fulfilled. Tunde stopped walking, turning to face her. And have you found fulfillment? Dara hesitated. I thought I had, but now I'm not so sure. Tunde's eyes softened. There's more to life than achievements, Dara. True fulfillment comes when you connect with others, when you let love in. It's not about losing yourself, it's about discovering a part of yourself you didn't know was there. Dara swallowed hard. For the first time in her life, she felt vulnerable, exposed. But there was a strange comfort in it, too. The days that followed were filled with an internal battle. Dara's mind was torn between her long-held beliefs about independence and the new, unfamiliar feelings stirring within her. She had always prided herself on her ability to stand alone, but now, Tunde's words echoed in her mind, and she found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about love and connection. One afternoon, while walking through the busy streets of Victoria Island, Dara's phone buzzed. It was a message from Tunde. I've been thinking about our conversation. If you ever want to talk more, I'm here. Dara paused, standing in the middle of the street. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Should she continue to shut Tunde out, or should she let him in and embrace something she had been avoiding her whole life? As she walked to her car, Dara found herself looking around, seeing the faces of strangers, wondering how many of them were truly connected to one another. The thought of community, of shared love, seemed foreign, yet strangely appealing. Tunde's presence in Dara's life continued to grow, and with it, her internal conflict. She was drawn to him, to his kindness and his quiet strength, but she was still scared. Scared that trusting someone would make her weak, scared that letting him in would make her lose herself. One evening, Dara was sitting at her kitchen table, reviewing work emails when she received a call from Tunde. Dara, he said, his voice urgent. I need your help. There's something going on in the community, and I can't do it alone. Will you come with me? Dara hesitated, feeling the familiar urge to reject the request. But this time, something in her stirred. Tunde needed her, and for the first time, she felt like maybe she could be strong in a different way, by being there for him, by offering her support. I'll be there, she said, surprising even herself with her decision. Dara arrived at the community center to find Tunde surrounded by a group of people. There was an urgent energy in the air as they worked together, organizing donations and setting up for an event meant to help local families struggling with the high cost of living. Tunde approached her with a smile. I knew you'd come, he said, his voice full of quiet gratitude. Dara looked around, seeing the community working together, each person contributing in their own way. It was a stark contrast to the world she had known, one focused on individual success rather than collective well-being. Tunde handed her a box of supplies. Can you help distribute these? He asked. As Dara moved through the crowd, passing out food and supplies to those in need, something shifted inside her. She had always viewed herself as a solitary figure, but now, in this moment, she felt part of something larger, something more important than her own ambitions. The more time Dara spent with Tunde and the community, the more her perspective began to shift. She saw how his actions, his quiet selflessness, brought people together in a way that nothing else could. He didn't seek recognition, nor did he expect anything in return. He simply gave, and in doing so, he transformed those around him. One evening, after the event had ended and the crowd had dispersed, Tunde and Dara stood alone in the center, the streetlights casting a soft glow around them. You're different, Dara said, looking at Tunde with new understanding. I never thought people like you existed. People who give without expecting anything in return. Tunde smiled. There's strength in giving, Dara. True strength. Dara couldn't deny the change within herself. She had always been proud of her independence, but now, she realized there was a deeper strength in connecting with others, in offering love without expecting anything in return. But her fears still lingered. Could she truly let go of her need for control? Could she trust anyone, enough to let them into her life? That night, Dara lay awake, her mind racing. The decision before her was daunting: to embrace love, to embrace vulnerability, or to retreat back into the safety of solitude. The weight of the choice pressed down on her heart, and she knew that soon, she would have to make it. The weeks that followed were filled with moments of doubt and revelation. Dara found herself seeking out Tunde more often, drawn to his wisdom, his calm presence. But she still hesitated, still unsure of whether she could truly surrender to the love and connection he offered. One day, while they were walking through a market in Lagos, Dara saw a couple arguing over a trivial matter. As the scene unfolded before her, she felt a pang of discomfort. She had always believed that love could be messy, that it was better to stay clear of it altogether. Tunde noticed her discomfort and stopped walking. "What's going on in your mind, Dara?" I don't know if I'm ready for this," she said, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can trust anyone enough to let them in." Tunde turned to her, his expression gentle. "You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to take the first step. Trust is built, not given freely." Dara's internal struggle reached a boiling point. She had spent her entire life protecting herself, guarding her heart. But now, she stood on the precipice of something new, something frightening. It was at that moment that her mother called again, her voice tinged with concern. "Dara, I've heard troubling things. I'm worried about you." Dara's heart raced. She was torn between the love and trust she felt for Tunde and the voice of caution that had guided her for so long. The following days after her mother's call were filled with confusion and a sense of overwhelming pressure. Dara found herself questioning every step she had taken towards Tunde and the growing connection they shared. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, urging her to be careful, to guard her heart. Yet, when Dara looked at Tunde, she saw a man who was nothing like the dangerous figures her mother had warned her about. He was kind, patient, and selfless, qualities she had never known to be dangerous. One evening, Dara stood by her window, looking out over the busy streets of Lagos. The city's constant hum felt far away, distant. She realized that she was no longer the same person who had first met Tunde. The walls she had built around her heart were beginning to crumble, and she didn't know if she was ready to face the vulnerability that would come with loving someone. Tunde's words from their walk in the park came back to her: "True strength comes from letting love in." With a deep breath, Dara made a decision. She knew that love was not about giving up her independence, but about discovering a different kind of strength, one that allowed her to trust, to share, and to open her heart. She was ready to let go of her fears. The next time Dara met Tunde, it wasn't under the usual circumstances. She had invited him to her apartment, unsure of what she wanted to say but knowing it was time for honesty. Tunde arrived with his usual calm, and after a moment of silence, Dara spoke. "Tunde, I've been fighting this feeling for a long time, and I've been too afraid to admit it to myself, let alone you," Dara began, her voice shaky. "But I realize now that I don't want to live in fear anymore. I don't want to keep pushing you away or pretending that I don't feel something. I care about you." Tunde's eyes softened as he walked closer to her. "Dara, you don't have to fight it anymore. I've been waiting for you to see what I see. You don't need to be afraid of love." Dara swallowed hard, her heart racing. The moment she had feared the most had come, but in that moment, she felt a sense of peace, as if everything was falling into place. "I'm scared, Tunde," Dara confessed. "But I'm willing to try." Tunde smiled gently. "That's all I need. We'll take it one step at a time." As Dara and Ton's relationship grew, so did the sense of change within Dara herself. She became more attuned to the way she connected with others, especially with the people in her life who had always been there for her, her friends, colleagues, and even her family. Ton's example had shown her the value of selflessness, of giving without expecting anything in return, and she began to see the world through a different lens. She started to volunteer at community events alongside Tunde, helping those in need, just as he had done for months. She realized that her once solitary existence had been a shield against the hurt she feared, but now, that shield had lowered, and she was beginning to experience the warmth of being truly connected to the people around her. But even as Dara embraced this new chapter in her life, the doubts she had carried with her still lingered in the back of her mind. Was she doing the right thing? Was she ready to fully embrace love without fear? One evening, as Dara and Tunde walked through the streets of Lagos, Dara's phone buzzed with a message from her mother. It was a simple text: "I'm worried, Dara. You're changing, and I don't know if it's for the better." Tunde noticed the tension in Dara's face as she read the message, and he stopped walking, looking at her with concern. "What's wrong?" Dara showed him the message, her lips trembling. "My mother, she doesn't understand. She's scared I'm making a mistake by being with you." Tunde took Dara's hands in his touch steady. "It's normal for people to fear change, especially when they can't see what you see. But you're not making a mistake, Dara. You're becoming the person you were always meant to be." Dara nodded slowly, the weight of her mother's fears still heavy on her heart. But Tunde's words gave her the strength to stand firm in her decision. "I won't let fear dictate my life anymore," Dara said, her voice stronger than it had been before. "I know what I feel. And I'm ready to move forward." Days turned into weeks, and Dara's relationship with Tunde blossomed. She found herself opening up to him in ways she had never done with anyone before. They spent more time together, not just on romantic dates but working together, helping in the community, and even having deep conversations about their past, their dreams, and their fears. Tunde's love had shown her what it meant to trust, to let go of the past, and to build something lasting. She no longer felt like she had to shoulder the weight of the world alone. With Tunde by her side, she felt empowered to face whatever came her way. But even as their bond deepened, a part of Dara still feared that she might lose herself in the process. Could she continue to be the strong, independent woman she had always been while also embracing the love she had discovered? One day, Tunde received a call that would change everything. The community center they had worked so hard to build was facing opposition from a powerful local figure who wanted to take over the land for his own profit. Tunde's calm demeanor faltered for the first time as he shared the news with Dara. "This is bigger than I thought," Tunde said, his voice tense. "I'm not sure how we win this fight." Dara immediately felt the weight of the situation. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, and now, with Tunde's faith in her, she was determined to fight alongside him. "I won't let this happen," Dara declared. "We'll find a way. Together." Tunde looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I knew I could count on you." Together, they rallied the community, speaking out against the injustice and organizing protest. They faced countless challenges, but with Dara's newfound strength and Tunde's unwavering commitment, they pressed on. The battle for the community center was long and grueling. There were moments when Dara and Tunde doubted their ability to win, but they never gave up. As the weeks passed, their efforts began to gain traction. More and more people joined their cause, and soon, the powerful figure who had sought to take over the land began to back down. The turning point came when the local government intervened, siding with the community and protecting the center from being sold. It was a hard-fought victory, one that showed Dara the power of standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. For the first time in a long while, Dara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She hadn't just helped save the center, she had helped save the community, and in the process, she had saved herself. The victory was sweet, but the true reward for Dara was the realization that she had grown stronger, not in spite of love, but because of it. She no longer viewed love as a weakness, but as a source of strength, one that gave her the courage to face her fears, to trust others, and to stand up for what mattered most. Tunde stood beside her through it all, a constant source of support and love. Dara no longer questioned whether she could love or be loved. She knew, without a doubt, that love was the most powerful force in her life. One evening, as the sun set over Lagos, Tunde took Dara to the park where they had first had their deep conversation about love. The air was warm, and the city's noise seemed distant, as if time had slowed just for them. "I have something I want to ask you," Tunde said, his voice gentle but full of emotion. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a small box. Dara's heart raced as Tunde looked up at her, his eyes full of sincerity. "Dara, I love you with everything that I am. You've shown me what true strength and love really are. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Dara's eyes as she gazed down at the man who had helped her discover a new world, one of love, trust, and community. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, I will." Dara and Tunde's engagement was celebrated by the community they had fought so hard to protect. It was a testament to the love they had built together, a love that had transformed not only their lives but the lives of those around them. As they stood together, hand in hand, Dara knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter. The love she had once feared was now the very thing that had given her strength, and she was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that with Tunde by her side, anything was possible. Together, they had learned that love was not just about what you took, but what you gave, and in giving, they had found the truest fulfillment of all.